Hello, and welcome to this episode of the Reset Podcast. I'm your host, Lauren Munoz, CEO of the experience agency D-Flash. Each week, I bring on a different business leader who's doing game-changing work. And, when we're in this time of COVID, we've been here for a while now, adapting your teams, how are your teams managing, and how are you as a business leader managing is so important to hear. And so that's why I'm super delighted to have Shari ReichenBerg, who's the Managing Director at RAPP New York, to talk about her role and how her company has navigated this very weird and wacky time. It's going to be a great conversation. Take a listen. Hey, Shari.
Hi, Laura.
How's it going?
Going well. Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
Awesome. We'll just keep talking about spas later. Well, even though obviously we're kind of, how many months in the pandemic? 6,000 years? I've stopped counting. But the podcast doesn't change. The first question doesn't change because I think it's still very important. And so, Shari, what was your first job?
Well, I had a number of, little gigs and internships and things throughout school, but I think the first relevant one was a summer internship I had in college. Back at home in Philadelphia, I worked for the Greater Philadelphia Tourism Marketing Corporation, GPTMC, which is basically the entity that is trying to advertise Philadelphia to visitors and try to get them to come and join. Something that was really big at the time is that Philadelphia was seen as somewhat of a pass-through city. Maybe you're driving from New York to DC or something like that, and you stop through Philadelphia to see the Liberty Bell, and then you keep on going. And Philadelphia as a city really wanted to change that image. There's sort of this underdog mentality about the entire city, like no one really wants to be here. And we really wanted people to stay, just stay for one night, eat at the restaurants, walk the streets, see the people, meet some folks, stay overnight. And we launched this campaign right around 2000 called Philly's More Fun When You Sleep Over.
I love it.
And it showed all of these, adults in their pajamas, in hotel settings or in restaurants and just kind of enjoying the city for the night. And it actually made a dramatic difference. There were partnerships with hotels and restaurants, and everybody was kind of in on the game. And visitorship went up a ton, and the campaign lasted almost 2 decades. In some way, shape, or form. But it was really a fascinating experience and something that I was really passionate about, having been a Philadelphia native.
Wow. Well, yeah. I guess you didn't really have a choice. You knew what you were going to do after that.
Yeah, I guess I did. And I had been, I had always been interested in marketing in some way, shape, or form, but it was it was such a good experience in learning how passionate one can be once, when it's something that you care about and there's a tangibility to this and you can actually see the difference, from pre-effort to post-effort.
Yeah, I think that's why we're all in this crazy business that, you actually get to see it. You actually, in many, many other industries, it's very rare to see like what actually comes together. I remember we did an event last year, maybe the year before, with this company that was a pharmaceutical company, and they actually invited some of the flavorologists for this particular product to the event, and they're like, we never actually get to see what becomes of the things that we're doing in the lab. And so to actually see something like this was just, it made it all feel more real to them. So same thing. And, in the universe of our world of advertising, physically getting to see like 20 years later, that campaign is still going strong is pretty incredible.
Yeah, exactly. And then, I think it also almost foreshadowed some of the specific areas of marketing and business that I ended up getting into later, in the sense that as the campaign grew more sophisticated over the years, I wasn't super close to it anymore because at that point, obviously my internship was long since past, but they were able to really start targeting the right kinds of people. Okay, well, here's folks who live in one of these surrounding cities, and we've seen a demonstrated interest in them, taking road trips with their families or looking for interesting weekend adventures, for themselves, like a getaway type of thing. And you could really start to differentiate the type of message with the type of person in order to get them to take the desired action. And that's very much what I do now. And it's just so interesting to think back about doing that as an intern, back in college.
Awesome. So speaking of that kind of internship back in college, so clearly you're no longer an intern. You think some time has passed, just a smidge. Like, how did you get to where you are now at RAPP? Like, what's that journey been like? Because obviously you had a really cool beginning where you definitely got to have your hands deep in something and see what kind of awesome impact you can make. But like, what's that ride been for you?
Yeah, sure. So I went to a PR agency after college, and after a number of years, I went to a full-time MBA program for 2 years at Columbia. And after that, I've been back and forth from the consulting world. I was a management consultant at Bain. To the agency world. I spent 7 years at Ogilvy, back again to consulting, this time as a partner, and now back again to agency. And so I've been, I think the common theme is that I have a business, and growth mindset. I really like digging into my clients' businesses and understanding them in the context of their industry, their competition, where they want to go, how they're going to be different, and thinking about, kind of real and tangible ways to help them grow, but also very much keeping that creative and human side in mind. It's not just about business strategy. It's how is it going to be meaningful, right, to the world, to your customers? How are you going to win their hearts and minds? So I really love the combination of those two things, sort of the left-brained business mindset, the right-brained human understanding, the EQ type of thing. And so I think what the theme of the story is about creativity in business, or sometimes I call it the art of business and the business of art. And I found my way to this role at RAPP somewhat by chance, but in a way it's exactly what I had been looking for throughout these past 2 decades, which is the opportunity to have a business leadership role in a creative company where you really have to understand that to be successful and to do well, you need to allow create space for creativity to happen. And when you're managing the financials, you can't just be so, strictly straightforward about, you put this in, you get this out. You have to think about the people and the humanity and how they do their best work, and then figure out how to be the most profitable and strongest company you can be given that.
It's so very key. And, it's interesting because, I think a lot of folks sometimes think, oh, well, you can only be on one side of the house, but it's the left brain and the right brain. And when they work together, that's what makes the best leaders, because you can see the full picture, and that's what you need to, or in order to be successful in our industry. It's interesting, like you were on the management consulting side of the universe and then came back into the agency side. What made you go back and forth?
I just, whenever I'm too far into one side of the brain, the other side starts totally freaking out. It's like,
what are you doing?
Yeah, what about me? Over here. And it happens both ways, right? So it's not just that when I was steeped in management consulting that I desperately missed working around creative people, which I did. But, there were years in some of my agency time where we were too focused on just the idea without having grounded it in the business realities, and without being strategic enough or data-driven enough. And that makes me crazy too. So it's almost like, yeah, it's great, to be a leader who's a left brain, right brain hybrid, but I actually can't even be successful to my standard in a role in which I can't leverage both sides.
Well, yeah, I think that's the thing that is so sometimes difficult for folks. It's like acknowledge left and right brain, but also realize that like you have to bring your whole self to the office and all the interesting things that make you. because that's when everybody wins. When it's sort of kind of like half-assed, you don't really, or you're pretending to try and fit in somewhere, that's when it doesn't work. And so it's so very key to have all of those pieces accounted for, and then embraced.
Exactly.
And so when you roll in RAPP, you started in November and you're like, oh, this will be great. And then I'm sure, you have a nice Christmas, everybody gets back from the holiday in January and you're off to Q1. And then this little weird thing called the pandemic decides to throw everyone's industry into a hellscape. How's that been? How have you guys adapted? What's been the world? How's the world? How have you been able to kind of navigate that with just from an office standpoint? But even before we get to clients, I think talking about how companies are helping their employees is first on the list.
Yeah, sure. So exactly. The timing was very interesting. So I had pretty much just finished, doing my rounds of listening and becoming oriented to what was happening. I had just presented my vision for 2020 to the office in my first town hall in January. We had, 80 people crammed into a room, and the slides and the speakers and everything all going. And then, very shortly after that, that's it. Everybody was home and totally freaked out. So it definitely was not the first year on the job that I expected. And then, just a few short months later, with the social justice movements post George Floyd, this is, the social justice movements is something that our people care so passionately and deeply about, right? And so to find myself as the leader of the office navigating now, not only being home, because of COVID and figuring out how to adapt from a business perspective and humanity and perspective in our clients, but also really kind of supporting and finding the right way to lead the team on that front, to make sure that everybody knows that they work for a company that stands, with this movement, and to do that in as right a way as possible that I could find. It's definitely been an interesting challenge. So I'd say, to answer your question about how we think about the people, very simply at the beginning of it, it was lots of communication, frequent check-ins. We started doing weekly all-agency town halls. The first week that we were home, we did 21 consecutive hour-long weekly town halls where we would share business updates, client work, have some fun kind of culture, team bonding type things. We had lots of different voices speaking. We had anonymous Q&A sessions. One thing we did that was a big hit was kudos. So people would give shout outs to their colleagues. This is a creative agency, so soon enough, those shout outs started taking the form of poetry or spoken word. It was really
awesome.
Yeah, it was really pretty awesome. We gave time off, extra time off. We called it, at the very beginning of this, we called it a thank you day. We have a social activism day now that is an extra a day off as well. We're checking in constantly. We're over surveying people on how it is that they're feeling, how we can be better supportive of them. We're immediately following up on any issues that are flagged. There's tons of actions that the agency is taking on the social justice and Black Lives Matter front. So we're giving people lots of opportunities to be involved in a way that we believe will drive impact and change, since it's so important. So we're just really evolving and adapting as we go to try to do what our people need.
Awesome. And so, look, we all have to evolve and adapt. And I think a lot of times folks think, oh, I have to solve all these problems tomorrow. And it's like, no, you can't. Yeah. It's going to take some time. And I think, I'm glad you brought up the racial justice and social justice movement right now, because obviously we're at this kind of very unusual time. So we're kind of at the beginning of fall. And, when people ask me like, hey, Laura, what do you think is going to happen with all of this? And I was like, it depends on whether or not everyone kind of thinks after Labor Day they can escape this. And if they can't, then I think it has a chance for meaningful and lasting change. And in my dark crevice in my mind, I said, probably someone's going to have to get shot again. And unfortunately, I was right. As I kind of called it. And so I think we are on that road to, I think this thing having some real sustaining and staying power where companies are making those changes. Like, how have you as a leader had to sort of navigate that ickiness? Because look, you're a white lady. You may have some friends named Karen. Because that's where we live in. And I think, what I always say about that is like, so do I. But, it's our responsibility to when we see things to see something, say something, and then call it out, especially amongst our peers, because that's how we actually make change. So for you, how's that been?
It's been exactly as you would expect, which is uncomfortable, right? I want to get it right. It's deeply important to me. I'm aware that there's going to be experiences I haven't had and things that I may not know. And so my MO has been, you cannot be silent, right? You have to speak, you have to lead, you have to demonstrate through actions and through words that you care. So do your best possible diligence. I have, a core cohort of trusted colleagues and friends who I'll kind of bounce ideas off of. I've bounced written language off of. I've, been parts of lots of different committees. I'm reading, I'm watching, I'm listening, I'm doing all the things that I possibly can to figure out how to get it right, or as I said before, as right as I possibly can, so that I don't blow it, so that I can try to be the leader that people need. And I think that I'm at the point where people know that my heart is in the right place, that people know that I care deeply, that the head is screwed on straight. And so if there was language that wasn't quite right, or if there was something that was omitted, but it shouldn't have been, I think I'm just about at the point where I'll get a pass, but I'll also get an alert so that I can get it right for next time, which is exactly what you need.
Yeah, my advice has always been listen, learn, and then act.
Right.
And because obviously I've gotten tons of phone calls and emails and direct messages and LinkedIn messages and tweets, and I'm like, oh my God, I need a Black lady. But my response has been like, that. But also, if I don't say something to you and kind of give some degree of guidance around this in a friendly manner, then nothing changes. And I think we have to acknowledge the exhaustion that comes to people of color, especially Black women at this particular moment, because, we're the ones who are getting asked for it quite frequently, and how things can be done. And so what I always say is that there's no way to blame anyone for where you are at this particular moment. But for as long as people are making the effort to start fresh today and move forward, and then that's how we all get through this together. And, we have to sort of check everything else at the door and realize that the folks who want to change, the folks who want to bring about real change within their organizations and with their relationships with their clients and how they're outward facing with their friends and family, those are the folks you want to bring to the party and not kicking the teeth. Right. If you do, then you're done.
Right. You raise a really important point, Laura, which is it is not right to put the burden of education on people of color. It is our responsibility to educate ourselves, right? And there's no shortage of resources available for people to do this. And that's why, as I said, I've been reading and watching and listening and doing as much as I possibly can in my time, I don't know if I have any free time, but in time, to try to get it right. And so one of the things that RAPP New York has done, which we're pretty excited about, is it doesn't have a sexy name yet, but it started out as this idea of book reports, and then it sort of became like a TED Talk style share out. But, we've all seen lists of suggested, media to consume, books, podcasts, shows, movies, things to watch that will help us on our journey. And it's too much for anybody to possibly consume, especially while we have full-time jobs. We're trying to maintain our health. Some of us are managing now kids in virtual school, which is a whole beast on its own. And so we're dividing and conquering as an office. So we have, a theme for each month, and a small curated selection of books, podcasts, articles, and such are selected, and we're asking the volunteers to consume all of this media, give it a lot of thought, discuss in groups, and actually share out what they have learned to the rest of the agency. And we have a whole schedule of rotating volunteers, people, media to consume, so that we can all do our own learning and absorb as much as we possibly can at scale on an ongoing basis, because this thing cannot stop. Right? This education cannot stop. This movement cannot die. So that's one thing that we've been doing.
Oh, that's interesting. It's funny, I always say that for every one dark, scary thing you read about, social justice and racism, please watch something happy and filled with joy that's also about Black people, because the big problem that I see a lot of is that a lot of folks are consuming all this darkness. So you've watched The 13th, you've watched When They See Us, you've watched really horrible documentaries about what lynching was. And I'm like, I get it, you got to do that. But then the other side is, please go watch Girlfriends on Netflix, go watch Martin, go watch Akilah and the Bee, because if you don't watch and absorb the everyday goodness and joy that comes from Black people, then everything is going to get colored by this degree of pity. We're like, oh, it's so sad what's happened to you. And systematic racism is terrible. Oh, I'm so sad for you. As opposed to oh, wait, this is really terrible. And this is a great reminder that you are amazing in your own right. Mm-hmm. And if you don't come at it from that similar angle, then it's never a path to equality, because it's always going to be this oh, well, I get it now. Oh, I feel bad. As opposed to this is terrible because you're just like me. You had the same boyfriend, girlfriend problems that I had when I was in my 20s. And I learned it by watching Girlfriends. Or, last night was Versus with Patti LaBelle and Gladys Knight. And I've never seen anything like that ever on Twitter, where it was just nothing but pure joy of having these two legendary aunties just going head to head and having the most glorious conversation. And so I would hope more people, white folks and different and non-POCs got a chance to go back and watch that too, because you've got to understand that people have joy, and they have strength, and they have humor, and that's also part of this conversation. And if we do that, then I think we're actually on a path to real lasting change.
Yeah, Laura, I love that advice. I will ensure that that becomes part of our program, and specifically some of the things that you referenced go into our program. So thank you. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Because I'm y'all, come on, please. Because I got asked 1,001 times to watch things that make you laugh, that star people of color. Just do it. So you'll get there. So we're now, 11 billion months into COVID. How are you navigating the world with your clients? Because obviously, data-driven advertising agency doing great work with, really amazing brands. How are your clients acting now? Because we all remember when it was in April, we're oh my God, what's this Zoom Teams thing? And this won't last for long. So, my Zoom setup in my office will be kind of kooky. And now it's oh wait, I have to buy a desk. I got a real comfortable chair because we ain't going nowhere. We are not going to be in person for a pitch ever again. So
yes.
How has that been from an agency and client side of the house?
Yeah, sure. So, we've been pretty lucky. I'd say, our business as a whole is still strong. In the earlier months of all of this, some of our more traditional clients kind of froze all of their marketing because their business was obviously suffering. And we really saw clients that were, I guess, COVID ready or made for a more contactless or digital world pop up. And so at first, our mix of clients shifted from kind of a more traditional financial services or CPG type of company into clients who focus on network security and securing a remote workforce, across the world, or a virtual payments company, for example, who's launching contactless payments, through QR codes, and whose business is absolutely exploding, right now in this world of, I can't go to a yoga class, but there's an individual yoga teacher who's doing a socially distant, thing outside in the park, or needs to be paid, through peer-to-peer contactless payments. So at first, I would say our client mix shifted, which is great. It's a good thing to be in an agency that is industry agnostic in that kind of time. But now that I think people are kind of settling in to the new normal, we've really been able to re-engage our traditional clients with new ways of thinking. So there was a financial services, a credit card company, basically, who had frozen their marketing dollars for the first part of the year. And we've helped them to shift their activity from the kind of credit card acquisition type of stuff that we had been doing with them traditionally to engagement and loyalty, right? This may not be a great time to get new people, into the ecosystem, but how do you take care of the folks who are already a part of your world? How do you ensure that they're able to pay? How do you ensure that when they are going to buy, they're going to do this, do so on your card? What else can the company be doing to take care of them? And how do we communicate that to them? There was a spirits company that we had started to engage with in the spring, in the late winter, and we had all these ideas about events and what they call on trade, which is, in bars or basically places where people gather, which we cannot do. And they're back now, and they're really interested in having us use data and technology and creativity just as we were before, but to shift to the at-home consumption world, right? And we can be better than just a couple of Zoom happy hours. And so I think that it's all about resilience and flexibility. It's all about figuring out, just as our clients are doing, how to take our craft, the thing that it is that we do, and adapt it, for the new world. And it's going well. On the whole, the business is still strong. We feel very fortunate to have such flexible and resilient people at RAPP New York who are helping us to do that and leading the way.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And as you all are kind of thinking about like 2021, what do you see, what's sort of next for RAPP? And now that, for all intents and purposes, a majority of next year we'll still be home. And if not us, our clients will still be home because, Spotify, Facebook, Google are all like June, August. Twitter's like never. So,
Right.
So that face-to-face interaction is effectively gone. Yeah. How do you all see that changing for you guys come 2021, and how you respond and how you even hire folks to come and join the RAPP family?
We have actually. So, back in March, April, when we had a couple of candidates we've been close to hiring, we said, well, let's hold off, until we're all back in the office, in a couple of weeks. Haha. By
how foolish we all were back then.
I know. I like to call it optimistic rather than just foolish, although maybe you're right. By July, we said this is ridiculous, and we started hiring people. And we have to just be incredibly thoughtful about their onboarding plan, how they're introduced to the agency, who they meet, how they're set up, frequent check-ins, at the very beginning in particular, to make sure that they're getting the lay of the land okay, 30, 60, 90-day goals, check-ins, all that kind of stuff. I mean, so that's just what this is going to have to be. One of the plus sides is that great talent can come from anywhere, right? I think we all used to be somewhat tied to our geographic area, and we don't want to hire, for example, a leader for a team when the team is all based in New York and the leader may be somewhere, in a totally different part of the country or in the world, because that team really needs mentorship and development and all that stuff. That remains true. But if we're going to be home for quite a while, we just have to adapt and provide that mentorship and leadership and apprenticeship in other ways virtually. So on the plus side, we can get great talent from anywhere. I think we're going to continue to see business model innovation from our clients. Virtual services will get better. And that's really across the board. Things like contactless, payments that I was talking about from the financial services company, or that kind of thing is going to continue to get better. I mean, people are innovative, people are creative, people are resilient. And so I think we're going to continue to see that type of business model innovation. For us at RAPP, RAPP has always been about personalization and one-to-one marketing. And I think for a number of years that kind of took this really trite turn where we would say, okay, well, this person wants to see a red box on their ad and that person wants a blue box, or the call to action, on an ad can change by one word. And we believe that that's going to make a meaningful difference, for this cohort of folks versus that. So I think that stuff is going to go away. People are stressed. They don't want clutter. They want useful, thoughtful information that actually is relevant to them. I think we're going to think about relevance and customization and personalization in a much more human-centric way overall as an industry. So no more move the button to the left or to the right or change the color, change the headline, but it's really taking a human-centric approach to our hybrid technology, creativity, data kind of system that we operate in, if that makes sense.
Awesome. That's so good to hear, because I think, a lot of folks are just like, oh my God. So
yeah.
It's be human first. I always say just lead with empathy. And so many folks are having such a difficult time, even if, they're turning on their Zoom cameras every single day. So and I think that's so key. Looking back on it now, and obviously no one could have predicted a pandemic. But what do you think you'd tell 25-year-old Shari when she's just getting kicked off in the industry?
I mentioned briefly when I talked about the tourism marketing internship in Philadelphia that Philadelphia kind of has this ethos of being an underdog, as in, it's we're not actually going to win, any of the sports. We're not actually going to come out on top. And maybe you have a really good fight, but at the end of the day, you don't achieve it. I think to some extent, natives of the town feel like underdogs themselves as well. And I'm not sure that I really thought that anything in this life that I am now so blessed to have was a possibility when I was first starting and when I was 25. And so I would say, and this isn't quite imposter syndrome. It's almost it's maybe a second cousin of it, but you're not an underdog, right? We are what we choose to be. We are what we can make ourselves, right? And in this world where we're making progress, I think, in terms of allowing people to find opportunities that they're excited about. And there's so much hard work and resilience and heart that people are having right now. I would tell myself, you're not an underdog. Don't put yourself, in a separate and kind of lower box than all of the folks that you admire. Just follow your passion, do your thing, bring others up with you, and you can do it. You'll get there.
Awesome. I think that's such great advice. And, you can get there. And speaking of giving advice, this is another one I think is actually really important. So obviously you're working from home. You're in the suburbs, right?
Yeah, newly in the burbs. Yeah.
I'm so sorry. Takes some getting used to. I did it for a long time. Never again, personally. But what are you doing for your self-care? Like, obviously, you said you kind of got thrown into the super deep end of the pool when you weren't expecting it, and you're swimming. But like, what are you doing to sort of like putting yourself first and navigating this very special world we're in right now?
Yeah, I mean, I admit that that's not something that is easy for me. In addition to this job, I've got, two young kids. All of a sudden, they're home and kind of the world is broken, and then all of the other things that we've been talking about were happening. So I had not necessarily been very good at that in the earlier days of this crisis, but I started to just really know when I needed something, when I needed to turn inward and do something that just made me feel better or good. So a lot of people on my Zoom calls see the guitars hanging on the wall behind me. I've been picking up the guitar again and trying to get better. It's impossible to be on a screen. It's impossible to be thinking about emails. I'm not very good necessarily at playing the guitar yet. And so I need 100% of my focus to be on the music. And I found that that's a really nice escape for me. And then also playing tennis. It's something that I had done as a kid. It's very difficult to do in the city because it's hard to find the space. And, here, one plus of being out in the burbs is there are courts here. And so I'm getting out in fresh air and getting exercise and just really trying to carve out the time to just find a neighbor, find a friend and go and play. You can really crush, some aggression, get some feelings out, but it's, so those are, I'd say, the two things that I'm trying to do. But I think that we all now are dialed in enough to this stressful time to understand when you're really kind of at the limit and you've got to stop and pull away. And you've got to find those things that are soothing. I mean, there's lots of wine, of course. I'm not going to lie. But, sometimes you just need to find, yeah, right? But sometimes you just need to find something, you kind of know what it is that you need to do. And so I've started to say, okay, these 17 things on my to-do list are going to wait because for the next hour, this is what I need. But that was hard.
I'm sure. I mean, that's the thing. I mean, one, on the wine front, how you survive that is, one, get you a friend who owns a wine distributing business like I do.
And nice.
So I have sent cases of wine to my girlfriends who have kids. So I'm like, here. It's like, there's nothing I can do, so I'm going to send you wine. And two, are you left-handed or right-handed? Because is it a backhand or a forehand for you?
I am right-handed, but I prefer my two-handed backhand.
So I prefer. So I'm a lefty, and so I have got a pretty solid one-handed backhand on my hand outside the universe because I'm so super dominant on the left-hand side that it's literally better for me to do a one-handed backhand than it is for me to do two hands. It's the wildest thing.
That's killer though, because you can slice probably really well. Yeah.
I have a good drop shot. I haven't played in so long though. I think I'm going to do it, but I haven't done it. I bought a bike instead. And so I paid so much money for that bike. So I use it almost every day now.
Biking is great too. We talk about quarantine upsides or trying to find, the good in this crazy year. And for me, tennis is an upside of having moved to the burbs where there's plenty of space for courts. And so it's not a big deal to just go and play. And that's really just how I'm trying to approach this year is, well, it's a wild one for everyone, but what's the upside here? I taught my kid how to ride a bike. I taught my kid how to swim. I would never have been around enough in order to be able to do that. It's not something who's going to pick up naturally. So we're finding our moments. We're finding our upsides here. And on the wine front, by the way, there's a great restaurant by Dale Talday, one of the former top chefs. It's actually out here in the burbs and actually right behind my house. And when we're closed, yeah, it's awesome. So Dale and I are now tight. But at the beginning of all of this, when they were closed, they were selling their wine inventory at half price. So rather than order online, go to a store, whatever, we would call them and, quite often And then just
supporting local businesses. Yes.
yeah, exactly. Just to try to support our local business, and that we call that self-care too.
Absolutely. But listen, I mean, I still live in Manhattan and I live downtown. And the greatest thing that has come out of all of this is to-go cocktails. Because
Definitely. Yeah.
it's like, wait, I can go. There's a Tacombe like 5 minutes away from me, and I order them way too often. But they have these sort of like 16-ounce to-go margaritas that are, I don't know if they put extra tequila in them or what, but they are so strong and so good. That has come in very, very handily because what else are you gonna do? It's like,
I mean, we just have to get through it, right?
You get through to get through. That's all you got. That's all you can do. And I think, but yeah, I think it's just finding these bits of joy and those moments you wouldn't have had otherwise, because we do have the gift of time, even though we think you don't. And just like you were saying, teaching your kids to ride the bike or learn how to swim. It's like, yeah, I haven't ridden a bike since I don't know, teenager. And honestly, it's become so much fun because like it is like my time to like go outside and like listen, actually read books, because I thought I'd read tons of books on quarantine. I hadn't read a single book. Right. I watched everything on Netflix, but I hadn't read a single book. So I finally used my Audible. Well, I think I have 11,000 Audible credits, and just started buying books. And so like I listen to books while I ride my bike up and down the West Side Highway because I'm terrified of the street. And it's been a thing I've had a chance to do. But I also think it's important for us all to remember that this is a time for us to kind of embrace some of our creativity, because actually you have some time to think, because we're not all hopping from plane to plane, going to South by, going to con, like going to client meetings all across the country and living on planes, which will hopefully get us into a better place.
Exactly. And, I think that one of the questions that I've heard you ask some of the folks is about, about mentoring young people and, what advice you might give to them. And I've done this for a long time. I always challenge people to think about what is it, when do they feel their best? What makes them happy? So this could be about the content of your work, but it could be about the feeling of it. Is it, working in a camaraderie type of environment versus working alone? Is it being able to see a tangible output of your work or not? Now is such a good time, to your point, Laura, when there's time, even though we don't think that there's time, to kind of look inward and remember who you are. Remember yourself and what makes you tick, what makes you feel great, what makes you feel not so great, and really kind of reignite your North Star and think about decisions, not just from your career, perspective and what you want to do next or whatever, but in your personal life too, to reignite that North Star and to follow your heart, because we have the time and the space to look inward and remember who we are, what makes us unique, and what makes us feel great and light up. And we have the time to figure out how to follow that North Star. So I think that coming out of this, I hope to see people really live their own truth a little bit more than kind of the continued rat race allows us to do in a normal year.
I love that. Reinvigorate your North Star. I think is just a beautiful way of explaining what the gift of time is right now. So thanks, stealing that. That might be the name of the podcast. So we'll see. But thank you so much. Like that's, I think that's a very succinct way of actually explaining what this time is right now. Because it's so wacky for everybody. But, if you can find a way to reinvigorate that North Star, you're going to come out for the better in any way that you can.
Exactly.
And last question, because I think it sort of dovetails nicely into what you just said, is that do you have a give and or an ask of the audience?
I hope this isn't a cop-out, but I kind of want to say exactly what I just said. which is listen to your inner self. Use this time right now to listen to your inner self. It could be physically, like, oh, I need to get out and have that fresh air. I'm finding that it rejuvenates me. It could be emotionally, actually some quiet time is just what I need. It could be professionally, where you say, even though we can't see people in real life, it makes me feel so good to have lots of these squares, on the Zoom call because I feel like I'm a part of something, or maybe the opposite, right? Think about the kind of work that you love to do that makes you happy. Think about whether, what aspects of the social justice, movements that are happening around us, or even kind of the political environment, or just this world really inspires you and drives you to action, or what makes you kind of want to bury your head in the sand, on the other hand. And so just jot those things down. Right? Think about that and jot those things down, because at some point the connection, the through line between those things will come clear. And I think that's how the reigniting the North Star will actually happen and take shape.
Awesome. And just a beautiful way to sort of sum up everything. You're good at this. Shari, it's been such a pleasure and delight to have you on the show. I mean, we could just keep on chatting.
It's been a blast. Yes. Thank you so much for having me, Laura.
Absolutely. When this is all over, summer of next year, let's have a cocktail.
I'd love to. Yes.
Or if you do sneak back into the city, let me know. I live very close to Nobu, and it's my really good place to drink. And they're open again. Thank God.
A Tacoma margarita and a little bit of food.
There are some benefits to living in Manhattan still. A few.
Yeah. Okay. Well, it was
awesome.
Fantastic. Thank you so much.
Thank you so very much. And we'll put your information in the show notes for folks to reach out and tweet and say hello. But yeah, you're doing such wonderful work and have such a beautiful outlook on where we're going. It's always refreshing to hear. So thank you so very much. And that is our show.